Eli Crane is joining me today. He is a former Navy SEAL, he is a business owner, and he just announced his candidacy for Arizona's 1st Congressional District. Eli, thank you so much for joining me today, and more importantly, thank you so much for your service.
Hey, thanks for having me, Samantha. I appreciate it.
Of course. Now, I just want to dive right in because you obviously have a history of giving back to our country, of serving our country. What led you to join the Navy in the first place, and how did that decision contribute to now your decision to run for Congress?
Yeah, well, I think that there's definitely some parallel themes there. I actually joined the Navy the week after 9/11, hoping to become a SEAL and basically trying to get into the thick of the fight, if you will. And now I feel like the fight for this country is within the country. I know I'm not the only one. There's veterans from all over the country. You got Brady Duke in Florida. You've got Morgan Luttrell in Texas. You've got Derek Van Orden up in Wisconsin. I believe Joe Kent out in Washington. There's so many veterans that are feeling the same way I am. They love this country. They fought for this country, and now they see the fight as within. And so I think it really calls us back into the fight, and that's why I'm doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually something I wanted to talk about next was, this fight within. And it's something that you brought up in the press release for when you announced that you were running, that you talk about the greatest threat to our freedoms and way of life isn't external, it's right here at home. So what do you view as the greatest threat to our freedom? And as potentially a congressman, how do you plan to address that?
Well, I think there's a lot there in that question, but let me start by saying I think that we've lost an understanding in the spirit of what our Constitution and founding documents are all about. Like when I read the Declaration of Independence, it talks about unalienable rights. Those are God-given rights. And then it goes on to talk about how the government is instituted to protect those rights. You wouldn't know that now if you watched how big the bureaucracy, how big Washington, D.C. has gotten. And furthermore, many of our elected officials, they don't behave and act in a way where they understand that our rights don't come from them. They come from God, and their job is to protect those rights, to protect the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, et cetera. And so I think a part of it is education. And I think a part of it is, totalitarianism. I think a lot of people that are in power crave power. They want to wrestle away freedoms and liberties from we the people because they know that not both sides can have them. The people can't have it's either the people have the power or you start getting into a dictatorship and tyranny basically. And we're seeing once again right now in Cuba, how that affects people. To some folks it sounds great on paper, but then every single time this stuff is tried throughout the world, it always leads to oppression, it leads to poverty, and you no longer have freedom. And it has to be put in check, and I think it's going to take fighters to get in there and do it. And that's why I'm running. I realize I don't sound like a politician. I don't look like a politician. And quite frankly, Samantha, I don't want to. But I do love this country. I have children. I want my children to grow up with the freedom and prosperity that you and I did. And furthermore, future generations. And I think it's unacceptable that so many of us have sat on the sidelines for so long, hoping that someone would come and save the day. Hope that somebody would come and fix it. Well, I got news, and that's why I said this isn't about me. We, the people, had better get off our butts and we had better find work. We had better get involved in this process if we want these freedoms and liberties to continue.
Well, just speaking of fixing things, something that does not seem to be getting fixed anytime soon is this border crisis that your state, Arizona, is dealing with as a border state. An Arizona sheriff was recently on Fox News and he called it an epidemic in my state that we have a border that's not secure. I know this is one of your policy issues that you plan on tackling if you're elected and throughout your campaign. So what potential solutions do you have in mind? And specifically relating to Arizona's 1st Congressional District, how is this border crisis impacting your fellow constituents?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And unfortunately, this isn't just a border state issue. As you know, if you track and follow what's going on, a lot of these folks that are, just come into this country, they go all over the country. They're bussed all over the country. They're flown all over the country, and it really is an invasion, and it's really sad. But when I look at leadership, I like to keep things simple. Okay, first of all, we need to take it seriously. We need to roll up that red carpet that was rolled out by the Biden administration and basically said, come one, come all. We have the right as American citizens to have sovereignty. We have the right to have our government that we pay for protect us. That's one of their most important rights. And it's pretty pathetic to me when I see, especially the vice president, when she's asked about the border, just start laughing. This isn't a laughing matter. The drugs pouring over the border, that's not a laughing matter. Human trafficking is not a laughing matter. And if you go and talk to these law enforcement agents, these Border Patrol agents, and folks that live on the southern border, they're not laughing about it. This is a real problem, and the government and this administration is not taking it seriously. So I want to keep it simple. I want to go back to Trump style policies that were working on the border. I want to make sure that not only do we take this seriously, but I want to make sure that we can enforce the laws on the books. We already have a lot of laws on the books that aren't allowed to be enforced right now. If you talk to a lot of law enforcement agents, they'll tell you, hey, if we're allowed to do our job, this thing is going to be diminished rapidly. And then the last thing I'd love to see happen is I would love to see the border wall finished. And I know that I can't even believe that a wall is controversial. I mean, walls have worked since the beginning of time, and real security and deterrence isn't one thing; it's multiple things. So it's a wall, it's well-trained Border Patrol agents, it's intelligence, it's using technology. But a wall is a very important part of any deterrence, any sovereignty. We used walls in the SEAL teams all the time. Military forces have been using walls since the beginning of time. Prisons use walls. I could go on and on and on about how walls do work. And I want to make that clear. It's not by itself a standalone solution, but all of those things that I talked about, you can bring this back, this very complicated issue at the border. You can break it down to some really simple solutions that will really mitigate and decrease this problem that we have on the border.
Now, just in terms of the first congressional district itself, you've had a Democrat incumbent since 2017, Tom O'Halloran, and he won in 2020 with just about 52% of the vote. And in 2016, your district won for President Trump, but then it actually flipped to President Biden in the most recent election, 2020. So do you plan, based on that switch, do you plan to take a more American first or America first policy approach like President Trump, or do you think you'll be more of a center line politician?
No, for me, this is about doing what I think is right. And on policy, I definitely align more with the America First movement. And honestly, I think that's where the base and the momentum of the Republican Party actually is. And so for me, that's the direction that I'm going to be, headed down. And I think the more and more of this decay of our country, managed decline, however you want to put it, is really, I think, waking a lot of Americans up to, how things were before Biden took office, how things were cooking along before, COVID hit, and where we're at now. And I think it's really making the case that there really is something to cause and effect in how the America First policies, when enacted properly, are effective for this country.
One final question for you. I've seen a ton of campaign videos, and something that struck out for your campaign video specifically was you were actually getting a tattoo while the video was being filmed. Can you talk a little bit about what tattoo you got for our audience if they haven't seen it yet, and why you chose that specific tattoo?
Absolutely. So I got a We the People tattoo. I'll show it to you right there. I don't know if you can see that, but it was the first time I've ever got a tattoo and had makeup applied at the same time. So I don't know if I made the Guinness Book or anything like that. We'll have to look into it. But, that's what this is about.
Mm-hmm.
We the people. I've got a whole patriotic sleeve on my arm. I was really excited when I saw the script. Like I said, I don't want to be a politician. I don't want to look like one. I don't want to sound like one. And my message to the American people is this: look, I know you're used to seeing folks, highly professional people, step up there in a pantsuit or, you know, a three-piece suit, and, you know, they look and they talk the part and they sound so smooth. But here's the deal: if you're happy with where we're at as a country, then by all means keep sending the same people. But if you really think that, if you really are worried about the direction of this country and the trajectory that we're on, and you want to see people fight for you, maybe send some fighters. Okay, that's what I am. You know, that's what I am. That's why I joined the Navy the week after 9/11. That's why I did 5 deployments in the Navy, 3 of them as a SEAL with SEAL Team 3, and that's why I'm doing this now. It's not because I want to go live in Washington D.C., the most corrupt city on earth. It's not. I want, no, that's not it. I want to make a difference, and I want people to start thinking outside the box a little bit and start looking at candidates with real character and real courage.
Now, I'm just curious. Sorry, I know I said one last question, but this is my final question. I'm just curious. You talk about you not being a politician, you not being, you know, someone who's just going to come to Washington, D.C. Obviously, President Joe Biden is, you know, as much of a politician as it gets. He was, you know, in the government for 40 plus years. So as your district voted for him in 2020, why do you think this sort of unorthodox approach might pay off for you?
Well, all I can tell you is what I'm hearing on the ground as I talk to people, as I go around. I meet with, you know, anybody that is willing to, you know, take the time to meet with me. And I sense a level of frustration, confusion, and even fear that I've never seen in my lifetime. I think it's all across the country. People that love this country cannot believe they're seeing so many things. And I hear this all the time: I never thought I'd see the day, you know, when people were locked down, weren't allowed to go outside. I never thought I'd see the day in this country, you know, that so many people, you know, were anti-American, and just doing things and spewing things and saying things that are so anti-American, you know. And so I think that people are waking up to the fact that we need some drastic change. And if you want drastic change, sometimes you have to think outside the box and look at reevaluate the way you've been doing things, what people you've been sending to lead. And I think that's why people are going to be more inclined to look outside the box at a candidate that's a little unconventional like myself.
I believe it was the White House press secretary Jen Psaki noted on Tuesday. It's, you know, they just hit their 6-month mark. So much has changed in the last 6 months. Obviously, we have a few more years with President Biden, and we will keep in touch with you to see how your campaign goes, and we'll be keeping a close eye on your race there in Arizona's 1st Congressional District. Eli Crane, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
God bless you, Samantha. Thank you so much. Have a great day.